Hello and welcome to Dream Big. I'm Hannah Viviers. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, last week we had Dr. Tibane and we could not let him go. Last week he was speaking very much about his personal life and his journey, leaving a medical practice that he had built to pursue his dreams. Today we're focusing on business. So if you've got a business or you're part of an organization, you don't want to miss this conversation with Dr. Tibane. Thank you so much for joining us again, Doctor.
Thank you, Hannah.
Doctor, I wanted this episode to really focus on business and to focus on destiny and purpose in business, because that is something that your company focuses a lot on. So let's talk about that. When you're talking about a corporation, it's this huge organization, and it seems as though the organization itself and how it exists is so much bigger than the individuals that are in it. So how do you bring this issue of purpose and destiny into a company?
Yeah, maybe we should look at what is business. In simpler terms, business is solving people's problems and charge for the solutions you're providing. That's basically what it is. Business is about solving people's problems, but charging for the solution that you provide. Now, there are two things, therefore. One is solving people's problems, and the second is you getting paid for the solutions you provide. So immediately then you can see that in simpler terms, the purpose of business is to make the world better. But this business must be sustainable, and that is why it must be financed. And it primarily gets its finances from the very place where it provides solution. So when you are an individual joining this business, it is bigger than you. That's why you are joining it. And therefore, there's a need for you to begin to align your personal purpose, your personal goals with those of the organization.
Do you sometimes find with the companies that you work for, I hear it from friends that are working, I've experienced it myself, where you go into an organization, yes, you're joining it, but you'll find that sometimes there is a huge disconnect between the person that's joining and what that company actually does when it comes to personal purpose.
And that's very sad. And they often would blame the company, but really we shouldn't. The company established itself to do what it ought to do. You went out to look for a job. You are the one who is supposed to reconfigure yourself so that you become useful to the organization. But obviously, if the organization is not well led, I understand that the managers or the bosses can manipulate and abuse the people who have joined it. I understand that. But all things being equal, you are supposed to find yourself fitting in this organization. In the first place, even at the time when they interviewed you, you were supposed to be asking questions, or even before the interview, you were supposed to research, where is this company going to? What are the values of this company? What are the principles that are guiding this business? And if the business is not going where you want to go to, in the first place, you shouldn't join it.
I would like to ask you about that, because it comes down to culture, really, the culture of an organization. I've had different jobs. Never in an interview have I been asked questions that pertain to the culture of the organization. I was asked about my skills. Yeah. So what do you do when you go into the companies that you would work with? For instance, you work with CEOs and MDs and leaders in organizations, speaking to them about creating that culture that you want to get you to the goals that you want for your business.
Yeah. And maybe we should go back a little bit and say, if you yourself are a person of purpose and you know you are here on earth to fulfill your purpose, even before you go to any organization, you should be looking for an organization that will not contradict your personal purpose. The fact that you are joining an organization, that does not mean you must lose yourself. However, when you get into this organization and you begin to ask about, things that have to do with an organizational culture and climate that's conducive for you to do what you ought to do, It is said that in other organizations, unfortunately, they will suppress you. But smart organizations, they invest so much in creating a culture that is conducive for performance, for growth, and for development.
I want to talk about that, and the reason I'm really hammering on this culture issue, and also, yes, it's the responsibility of the individual who's going into the business, but it's also the responsibility, I would imagine, for the business to create the culture that it wants. And I think the example that comes to mind is Zappos in the States, and the CEO of Zappos was just talking about he had built this very successful company, which he hated working at eventually because of the culture. And when he built another very successful company, Zappos, which is hugely successful, he was saying that when they started to hire, they were hiring very differently from the way he had hired in the previous company. Very focused not just on skills, but on who are we bringing into the organization? Are they going to fit into what we're trying to build here?
Yeah. We need to understand that organizational culture is underpinned by values. In other words, what does the business value the most? Do we value integrity? Do we value honesty? Do we value time? Do we value paying attention to detail, etc., etc.? So these values, however, they need to be cultivated. They must not just be written on paper with ink, but they must be written on human hearts with blood. And who writes them is the leaders. And how do they write them on human hearts? They write them, number one, by modeling. You exemplify, because your followers hear the sounds of your footsteps more than they hear the sounds of your vocal cords. So if you value time, they will not come on time because you said you must come on time. They will come on time to work because they see you valuing time in all you do. And the second way in which leaders cultivate values or write values on human hearts is by measurement. Peter Drucker, before he died, he had come up with a very beautiful statement. He says, what you measure is what you get. What you measure is what you get. Stated differently, whatever gets measured gets done. Now, that statement, what you measure is what you get, is critical because it means that you better be careful how you measure the success or the performance of your people, because what you measure is what you get. For example, if we say the employee of the month will be the one who remembers the name tag each time they come to work, guess what? What you measure is what you get. Everybody will do their best to remember their name tag when they come to work, even though they are late, even though they are rude to customers. Because what you measure is what you get. So if you want to cultivate a value called get the best of your time, then the employee of the month should be the one who upholds the value that you want to see. So smart organizations therefore decide what kinds of an organizational culture do you want to see, and then what values will produce or underpin this culture, and thirdly, how are we going to cultivate the values? Number one, we are going to model those values. And number two, we are going to link these values to the way we measure the performance of our people.
I'd asked you about team building,
Yeah.
and I've heard, people that will go in team building and it's supposed to build team spirit, I suppose. And it seems as though in some cases it happens, people get away from the office, and that's all it is time away from the office. Dynamics don't really change. So you do a lot of team building.
Yeah.
What are some of the key elements that you would bring into your team building sessions?
I must first of all say that team building is not an event. The fact that you went out for the weekend, like I'm going somewhere now for that event, that doesn't mean you'll come back being a team. There are various things that need to be done. In fact, for me, when we go out, we should really be going out to celebrate the fact that we have worked on issues that have now brought us together. Now, there are 5 things that I look at, which I believe that they are pillars of a winning team. Winning organizations or winning teams, number one, they sharpen their vision. So they have a common vision. If this organization is going to some promised land, they have a clear picture or a mental picture of the promised land. They see the milk, the honey, and the grapes. But the milk means the same thing to everybody. Whatever grapes are, they mean the same thing to everybody. Whatever honey is, it means the same thing to everybody. So they sharpen their vision. Why?
Before you continue, do you sometimes think that there is a disconnect between the vision that the organization will say this is what the vision is and what the employee understands that vision?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. If it has not been well communicated, nobody will know it. Because leaders are supposed to define the vision, but then they are supposed to declare it. And many leaders, they end the declaration. But they have not disseminated it. Now, disseminating means people must buy into it. They must interrogate it and buy into it. So the sharpening of the vision is important. But secondly, shaping values. Winning teams, they shape their values. Why? Before we come to this organization, we value different things. But now that we are part of this organization, we need to shape our values. And where we say these are our shared values. When we say these are our shared values, we mean we can differ on other things, but not when it comes to the following 4 or 5. When we say these are our core values, we are saying we can make mistakes on other things, but we can't make mistakes on the following 4 or 5 because these are core values, non-negotiables. But number 3, they synchronize their viewpoints. They synchronize their viewpoints while they acknowledge that we've got different backgrounds, different experiences, different schools of thoughts, religion, culture, etc. So our viewpoints are different. But because we believe we belong to the same organization, we need to synchronize these viewpoints so that they begin to work for us. And that's where diversity management becomes important. And number 4, they share their ventures. They share their ventures. By definition, you get employed because you are good at something. So we are all specialists. HR, financial people, engineers, etc., etc. Now, it's your venture to be an HR person. It's my venture to be an engineer. But we need to share these ventures. In other words, I need to do my engineering work with your HR function in mind. And then the last one is
before you move to the last one,
yes.
I'd like to talk a little bit about that, because again, it's the when you go into these organizations, you'll find that this department doesn't get along with this department, and this department thinks that they bring in the money, so they should have this, and you have that in organizations.
And the reason is because they don't have the same picture of the promised land. So the engineers, milk means something else for them. They don't understand that it is a promised land for all of us, but we must work together to get there. So somebody will be this CEO who is more of the visionary, communicating the vision, but there is someone who is doing that and someone else is doing that, and all of us must work together. If it is a train during the times of the coal-driven train, there would be a train driver, but then there are people who are busy putting in the coal to make sure that the fire keeps burning, and there are people who are doing something else, and there's a ticket examiner. All of us are working together to make sure that this train gets there. And of course, the last part is they sanctify their vows. It means they take seriously what they say.
Sanctify your vows sounds very out there. What is it?
Putting it in context, remember we're talking about the habits of winning teams. Mm-hmm. Number 1, they sharpen their vision. Number 2, they shape their values. Number 3, they synchronize their viewpoints. And number 4, they share their ventures. But number 5, which was the last point we talked about, they sanctify their vows. When you're part of an organization, you've already made a vow, either through the vision statement you have or the values that you have publicized on your walls. If you are part of government in South Africa, the Batupile principles, the conditions of employment, your single-minded proposition, your slogans, all those are promises that you have made either to one another or to your customers or to your stakeholders. And every promise creates an expectation. So it's a vow that you have made. Now, the word sanctify means to purify or keep something pure. So when I say sanctify your vow, I mean that don't, through your actions and behavior, contaminate. Do not contaminate your promises, your vows. So in other words, on a daily basis, you must now check your actions and your behavior, making sure that your behaviors and actions are in line with the promises which have now created expectations. So if you say, in this organization we value time, and it's on the wall, and the customer comes, and they wait there for 3 hours waiting for you, your actions of not managing time, you are now contaminating, you are polluting the vow that you have made through the value that's on the wall.
And it seems to me that as customers, I think a lot of the time this is what frustrates us when we work with business, is that they've promised us one thing and they're giving us something else. But I'd like to speak about, you were saying that in your team building you spend about, I was saying, do you do activities? You say a lot of what you do is talking with the people that you're working with.
And getting them talking as well, so that they can meet at a heart level as well as at a mental level. So there's a sincerity of heart and a singleness of mind. And that's a very important aspect of it. We can cross rivers together. We can play volleyball together. But if we hate each other, that does not mean that when we go back to the workplace, we will now be loving each other just because we played volleyball together in the bushes. And if we have not dealt with those things that are frustrating us, our concerns and our fears, and especially our perceptions, because it's really perceptions, misplaced perceptions, where because I'm hurting from the past, my mother, for example, died because she fell on the road, because she forced herself to go to work. And why did she force herself to go to work? Because her boss, one day when she was sick, she never went to work. The following day when she did, the boss said, should you not come to work again, don't come back here. And she was taking care of me as a single parent at that particular time, walking 7 kilometers to a farm every day. One day she fell sick. She was afraid of her boss. She forced herself to go to work, and she died on the road. She fell down and died. Now, in my mind, the whitey who was the boss to my wife, to my mother, killed my mother. Now that's a perception. So in my mind, I developed a viewpoint. White people are killers. Why? That Afrikaner guy killed my mother. Do you understand what I'm saying? I can carry that all my life, where I'm hating white people. It's a perception. But I was fortunate because when I finished high school, the people who helped me was not only the principal of my school. A white guy came in to assist. So in my mind, I said, wow, a whitey killed my mama. A whitey takes me to school. So I changed my mind. Now, when you interact with people and you begin to share stories, etc., you'll be amazed that there are people who are so damn lazy because they've got a wrong perception of what work is. If I had a previous boss or a supervisor who was like a messenger of misery in my life, and I left that company, I come to this company, you are my supervisor. If in my mind all supervisors are the same, I behave the same way. So people are carrying the baggage of the past into the workplace, and these things need to be dealt with because we are now in the same boat. Now, when we are in this boat that must not sink, we must throw out things that are unnecessary, things that make this boat to behavior than necessary.
Do you think that companies, I mean, you work with a lot of companies, and I'm sure because the space that you're in, you get a lot of information and research about what's happening in the business space in South Africa. Do you see a lot of businesses spending and investing time in dealing with these issues that will eventually, it's going to affect their bottom line? Or do you think we're still in a space where it's all about put in the hours, work?
Yeah. Many companies, unfortunately, they are really not investing in organizational culture. They are not investing in human capital. But we do have organizations in this country that are really investing in human capital. And they understand that the soft issues actually determine the hard issues. Hard issues of profitability and productivity are actually determined by the soft issues of relationships, where they learn to balance relationships with results. In other words, never pursue results at the expense of relationships, because all results do not fall from the sky. They are a product of human effort, and any endeavor that seeks to pursue results at the expense of the humans that produce those results, that will be unsustainable. But equally, don't spend all your time massaging and nurturing relationships at the expense of results, because if you do that, you are a social club full of a bunch of people that live well together in harmony, but getting poorer and poorer and poorer because there are no results. So a balance then becomes important. But because behavior is underpinned by values, it means that organizations must have balanced values. Values that will enrich relationships and values that will drive results. And the balance becomes crucial.
One of the things I said to you is that this takes time, especially if you go into an organization where the culture is so defunct and it's not. Do you have success stories where you've gone into an organization and you have all these issues of perception and baggage, and you've worked with them and gone back, some time later, and things have changed?
We have lots of examples, but also what is crucial as well, apart from our intervention, we also, just to emphasize on the importance of leadership, we have seen organizations which, when they were led by so-and-so, they were down there, and now that a new leader has come, and everybody still the same. The only thing that has changed is a leader, and you see an organization rising, because the truth is, no generation, no family, no country, no business can rise above the level of its leadership. So organizations or countries or generations, they oscillate up and down in response to the magnitude of their leadership. If you see a company going down, it is responding to the excellence of its leadership. And when you see it go down, it is responding to the mediocrity of its leadership.
When I look at your work, the body of your work, you seem to have a very strong vision of what you hope for South Africa. Could you share that with us?
The vision that I have is not different from the vision that the founder of this country had, and I'm referring to Nelson Mandela. A country where both black and white are going to live together and everyone has got equal opportunity. A country that is at peace with itself. That is the vision that I have for this country. And it is possible. But unfortunately, it does require leadership. Leaders that are obsessed with the splendor and the beauty and the glory of that promised land, which is an ideal country. Somebody must be so obsessed with it that a person like Nelson Mandela, when he left Robben Island, because he was obsessed with peace, forgiveness, and reconciliation, one of the things he did was to visit the very widow of H.F. Verwoerd, the very author of apartheid. A person who, even when his closest friend and comrade Chris Hani was assassinated in the pool of blood, when many of us were angry, wanted to go kill whoever did it, even before he became president, he spoke like a statesman and he calmed the nation. A person who, even when he heard somebody saying, but it's a white man who killed Chris Hani, he stood up and said, but it's a white woman who called the police and made it possible for us to catch the killer. He was obsessed with this ideal country. So like a Martin Luther King Jr. who said, I've been to the promised land. And when I was on the promised land, I saw my children going to the same school with the children of my oppressor. And because of what I've seen, I no longer care about those who undermine me. I no longer care about those who criticize me. I only care about doing the will of the one who have sent me. And I know that I may not get there myself personally, but I know for sure that as a nation we shall get there. Why? when it comes to vision, it's no longer about you, it's about others.
Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. It was absolutely wonderful having you. I know you're so busy, so we're so grateful for your time and coming on Dream Big.
It's been a delight and a privilege for me to be here. Thank you.